Welcome back to another video. If you like this kind of content, consider subscribing and hitting the like button so we can game this YouTube algorithm, which suppresses content like this in favor of mainstream lies. I had a comment the other day and I liked it and decided my next video should be about this. So he said, "Hey Romans, can you make a video about some good books for young adults to read? It would be really helpful. Thank you." Yes, I can. And I thought of a lot of books because, quite frankly, I believe that you should always be reading a book. There should always be a book in your library or in your Kindle that you've got going on every night or every other night. Constantly be reading and learning. And I say stay away from novels and fiction and stick with history, reality, and things that teach you stuff. Always be learning, right? And yeah, there were a number of books that I decided to bring up and talk about for this video, particularly for young adults. Keyword young adult, right? Like probably not for a kid, probably not for a 6-year-old, unless that 6-year-old is really advanced. Probably for someone like maybe 10 and up, and probably for men too, to be honest. Like everything else on my channel, it's for men. So let me just kind of go into it. The first book, you've probably heard Vox Day talk about this book. He is actually putting it in his, is it the Castelia Library thing? He's got a program that people are buying into and subscribing to where he actually sends you books that are wrapped in goat skin, goat leather, like really high quality stuff, right? So if you like collecting books that you want to last a long time on the shelf, it's a great program. I'm actually not part of it, but the first book that I'm going to talk about is the next one I think that he's putting out, and it's called Meditations, and it's by the famous Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius. You can download this book for $1 on Kindle if you want. I think it's literally 99 cents. It's an ancient book that's been translated to English. Nobody owns the copyright to it, so I highly recommend this book. So that is a book about Stoicism, which young men absolutely need to be introduced to. They need to be introduced to Stoicism at a relatively young and fair age. That is a big part of the rite of passage that most men do not get in their lives. So introducing them to the concept of Stoicism is super important. Meditations is probably the end-all, be-all of Stoicism books. Marcus Aurelius was a very, very well-known Stoic. This book is so well-known, in fact, that a lot of famous military leaders carried the book, including the former Secretary of Defense and Army General James Mattis. He carries this book wherever he goes. That's how important it is to him. Definitely recommend Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. The next book that I'm going to recommend is actually a book that I haven't even finished reading. I'm in the middle of it right now. And it's called Hard Times Create Strong Men by Stefan Aarnio. Aarnio actually died recently, like maybe a few weeks back, from cancer. He's in his 30s. He's like my age, and he's unfortunately passed away due to cancer. But he had a lot of really good books about succeeding in business and finance, and also about men's culture. This one is like that kind of a book. So it's got a lot of Stoic concepts in it as well, but also will introduce men to some red pill stuff as well about, the type of men that women want to be with, etc., etc. He also talks about leaving, the boy behind and rising up into a man. And you know what that means, guys. Put away the video games, put away the porn. Anyway, very good book. Next book, Practical Female Psychology. This book is very well worded. It absolutely is not a woman-hating book, but it does discuss, game and how to, it's going to basically introduce young men to game and introduce young men to the concepts of a lot of the stuff you find on the TRP community. It's very fairly worded. It praises women, but tells you about their true nature and what they really want. And it's a great book, and I recommend it to a lot of my friends who I know struggle in their relationships or in their hopeless romantic life. On the topic of red pill, also would always recommend The Rational Male. Anything by Rollo, Tomassi is pretty much gold. And you definitely want to add this to a young man's library. You can probably just start with The Rational Male. I will say it's very analytical, so it's not written in a very entertaining way. So if you've got a short attention span, or if you're going to give it to a kid with a short attention span, it might be a little bit much, but that's definitely going on the list. And as well as the No More Mr. Nice Guy book. This is perfect for, well, just about every guy who grows up in America these days, unless he's a natural born alpha. He was brought up to be a sissy nice boy, and nice guys finish last, and it's definitely not the way to be. You gotta read this book. This is a must-have. Moving on to a slightly different topic, I would talk about basic economics. This is from Thomas Sowell. Thomas Sowell is a very famous American economic professor. I think he actually teaches somewhere. And he's got quite a few books about economics and finance, but every man should know about basic economics. This is, you read this once and you'll understand why communism doesn't work. You'll understand why socialism doesn't work. Absolutely must have. A little bit different, not a Stoicism book, not a red pill or game book, but still a book that every man needs to read, especially a young man. These final two books are somewhat intertwined, but not really, and you'll see why. Especially here in the West, it's super important for every boy and every man to read History of the Crusades. This book is super detailed. It talks about every aspect of the life of a squire and a knight from medieval times, and gives you the both sides of the story of the Crusades, whether it's coming from the Christian side or the Saracen Muslim side. Everyone needs to read this book. A lot of people in America, especially in the West and Europe, for some reason were taught that the Crusades were really, really bad, and we should all be ashamed for that. I'm definitely not. I'm very thankful that we have the U.S. Constitution, the English Magna Carta, and all the wonderful rights we enjoy today because the Crusades occurred and they prevented Islam from taking over the West 1,000 years ago. I'm grateful. But read the history of the Crusades because it is definitely not exactly what you think. And on that note, because the Crusades were fought by religious people, and especially at least in the beginning, were successful by Christian men, particularly Catholics, I would absolutely recommend you read Mere Christianity. I've talked about it in my previous video. I think I did an actual review of the book, but it is a super, super important book to understanding maybe the faith you have, or maybe the faith you hear other people profess but you don't quite understand. I think every real man is going to come to God in one way or the other, but my preferred methodology is through Christ, and Mere Christianity is my favorite of all the Christian books I read in the last year. So that's a good start, I hope, for you. That's about 8 books that young men should read. And with that, have a good day. Take care. Hey, thank you so much for listening or watching the video today. I want to ask you, what kind of things do you want to hear about? You know what we really focus on in this channel? It's about men's education, right? The manly arts, finance, religion, and health and fitness. So if you got any questions around these topics or things that you think might be relatable or that I could bring any fact or opinion on, by all means drop a comment below, and feel free to email me at rightofpassage85@gmail.com. Thanks so much. Take care.